Before we dive into the event horizon today, now that you've found us, subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking the bell. The future is moving incredibly fast, and there's no need to miss out on any of our upcoming deep dives into the science fiction decade.
Absolutely.
So welcome, everyone. It's really great to have you with us today. We are looking at a dispatch that genuinely feels like it was mailed backward in time.
It really does.
Right. Like perhaps from a reality that most of the world hasn't quite realized we are already living in. So we're jumping into a brand new deep dive based on a, frankly, mind-bending post from Dr. Alex Wissner-Gross.
From his Substack blog.
Exactly, the Innermost Loop. And the specific dispatch we are unpacking for you today is dated March 9, 2026. The theme of our journey today is exactly what he titles it, which is The Science Fiction Decade, Why the Singularity is Now a Spectator Sport.
Which is such a brilliant framing.
I have to tell you, reading through this source material, it actually gave me goosebumps. We are talking about a snapshot of a world that is shifting under our feet at light speed. And the sheer volume of data in this single dispatch is just staggering.
It sets the perfect stage for our mission today, I think. What we are doing in this deep dive is taking this high-velocity intelligence straight from the AI of Event Horizon and synthesizing it.
Synthesizing it for you, the listener.
Exactly. The goal is for you to understand not just what is happening in this rapidly accelerating timeline, but why it is happening. We're looking at how the demand side of superintelligence is radically restructuring our entire world.
Because we're moving from a period of theoretical speculation.
Where we debated what AI might do someday.
Right, into a period of hard physical reality. The infrastructure of our daily lives is literally being rewritten right now.
The future isn't something we're waiting for anymore. It's something we are currently navigating, managing, and in many cases, just trying to survive and keep up with.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way this dispatch opens is spectacular. Dr. Wissner-Gross says, the singularity is now a spectator sport, and the front row is standing.
That is such a vivid image.
It really is. We've talked about the singularity for years as this hypothetical point in time when technological growth becomes uncontrollable.
Irreversible.
Right. And the classic idea was always that human engineers would be sweating over keyboards right up until the last second, frantically coding the final breakthrough.
The active creators.
Yes, but framing it as a spectator sport changes the entire dynamic. It implies that the heavy lifting, the actual creation and innovation, is increasingly being done by the machines themselves.
And we are just in the stands.
We're just watching the game unfold on the field. The people in the front row, the AI elite who actually built the initial architecture, they're giving us some quotes in this dispatch that really capture the mood of this exact moment.
What's fascinating here is how the quotes from the frontier developers illustrate this profound shift from active creator to stunned observer. You have Sam Altman proposing what he calls the ultimate AGI party trick.
Which is wild.
He suggests asking the model, what is the hardest question I could ask you that you might get right?
That just sort of breaks your brain for a second.
Think about the epistemological shift happening there. Historically, humans have always been the ones to define the boundaries of knowledge.
We act as the explorers.
Right. We survey the map of human understanding, find the blank spaces at the edges, and formulate questions based on what we know we don't know. The scientific method entirely relies on the human mind generating the hypothesis.
But Altman is suggesting we've crossed the threshold.
A massive one. The machine's map of reality, its latent space of connected concepts, is so much vaster than our own individual cognitive maps that we actually have to ask the machine to help us locate the edge of our own ignorance.
So we're basically asking the oracle to invent the riddle. We don't even know what we don't know anymore, but the machine does. That is a wild reversal of the traditional human-tool relationship. I mean, a hammer doesn't tell you where the nail should go.
But here, the tool is defining the scope of the project.
Yeah. And then the dispatch highlights Elon Musk predicting that full AGI, artificial general intelligence, is arriving by the end of this year, 2026.
Which is right around the corner.
Right. Now, timelines in tech are always slippery, but the sheer confidence of stating that the finish line is months away rather than decades is really striking.
And following that, Greg Brockman from OpenAI dropped a classic Back to the Future reference.
I love this part.
He says benchmarks. Where we're going, we don't need benchmarks.
I understand the movie reference, but what does that actually mean in practice? Because for the last few years, the entire industry seemed obsessed with these standardized tests for AI.
They were everything.
Right. We were constantly hearing about how a model passed the bar exam or aced the SATs or passed a medical licensing board. If we don't need benchmarks anymore, how do we even know what the machine is capable of?
Well, a benchmark is fundamentally a static human construct. It's designed to measure a specific, narrow type of cognitive task based on human educational standards.
Like the bar exam measures, if you can memorize and apply legal precedent.
Exactly. The SAT measures high school level math and reading comprehension. But those yardsticks were built for biological brains that learn linearly over decades.
Which these models definitely do not do.
Right. When you are dealing with an intelligence that improves itself exponentially and can access the entirety of human recorded knowledge simultaneously, those human-designed yardsticks become obsolete almost as soon as they are published.
So Brockman is pointing out that when an AI system can score in the 99th percentile on every single human test ever devised, the tests lose their utility.
Precisely. You can't use a standard classroom ruler to measure the distance to the moon. The scale of the intelligence is evolving so rapidly that the rulers are snapping.
That makes the next quote even more relevant. Mark Andreessen has simply named this era the science fiction decade.
It feels like an admission that normal historical paradigms have completely failed.
We can't compare this to the Industrial Revolution or the invention of the printing press anymore because the compression of time is so extreme. We're living in a timeline where decades of technological evolution are happening in months.
And nothing in this dispatch captures that speed better than what Andrej Karpathy is doing.
Oh, the Autoresearch.
Yes. According to the source, his Autoresearch project autonomously discovered training improvements across 2 days and 650 experiments.
2 days.
And his reaction to this was, who knew early singularity could be this fun?
I love the sheer dizzying joy in that quote, but I really want to understand the mechanics here. How does a software program do its own research? Is it just running trial and error really, really fast?
It is far more sophisticated than simple trial and error. What Karpathy's Autoresearch demonstrates is the closing of the development loop.
Okay, walk me through that.
Traditionally, a human AI researcher looks at the architecture of a neural network, hypothesizes a tweak to the code that might make it run more efficiently, writes the code, runs an experiment, analyzes the data, and then implements the change.
Which is a very slow manual process.
Highly manual. Autoresearch means the AI system itself is generating the hypotheses for how to improve its own core architecture. It writes the experimental code, executes it, measures the performance gains, and if successful, integrates that new knowledge into its next iteration.
And it ran 650 of these complex, multi-step scientific cycles in 48 hours.
Yes. The bottleneck in scientific discovery has always been human cognitive limits and our biological need to sleep.
So by removing the human from the active research loop and handing the steering wheel to the model, the pace of discovery is limited strictly by the amount of electricity and compute power you can feed it. So the AI is the scientist, the lab technician, and the data analyst all at once, while the human researcher sits back in the stands.
The Spectator Sport analogy.
It's locking right into place.
Yep.
But while it sounds thrilling for the engineers in the front row, the dispatch also captures a deeply unsettling undertone to all of this.
Dylan Patel's quote.
Yes, Dylan Patel from Semi-Analysis offers what the source calls the most visceral framing of this exact moment in time. He says that being in San Francisco right now is like being in Wuhan before the pandemic.
Let that sink in for a second.
I know. That is an incredibly eerie, almost chilling comparison to make about a technological development.
It is a stark analogy, but from an analytical standpoint, it captures a very specific sociological phenomenon, which is the asymmetry of awareness.
How do you mean?
Think back to the very early days of the pandemic. If you were an epidemiologist or a doctor on the ground in that specific region, you were looking at raw data.
Infection rates, viral structures.
Right. Transmission vectors that told you the world was about to fundamentally and irrevocably change. You could see the exponential curve forming before it breached the general public's awareness.
But if you looked out your office window, people were still going to cafes.
Commuting to work, planning vacations, completely unaware of the invisible wave that had already been unleashed. Patel is arguing that San Francisco right now, for the AI engineering elite, feels exactly like that.
Because they're looking at the internal capabilities.
In closed-served environments, yes. Capabilities that haven't been fully deployed or commercialized to the general public yet, they can see the exponential curve of synthetic cognition.
They know the socioeconomic fabric of the world is about to be rewritten.
But outside that specific bubble, society is largely still functioning as if it's a normal Tuesday.
An invisible wave. That is exactly what it feels like when you read these dispatches. It's the feeling of holding a secret that is just too big for the world to process all at once.
And part of that secret is what these new models can actually do when you take them off the leash.
Right. The dispatch gives us a peek at the frontier of these capabilities, and some of the benchmarks they're using now are bizarrely specific. For instance, the source mentions GPT 5.4, specifically a high-tier version, which can now simulate realistic, numerically stable cloth physics and cutting.
Which is incredible.
When I first read that, I was a little confused. Cloth physics. Out of all the things a supercomputer could be doing, curing diseases, solving fusion, why are the frontier developers so excited about the way a digital piece of fabric folds?
To understand why this is a monumental breakthrough, you have to look at the history of computer science and physics simulations. In the realm of computer graphics and simulated environments, cloth has always been considered a holy grail of complexity.
Why is that?
Because it is a highly chaotic, non-linear system. Think about a piece of silk falling onto a wooden table. Every single fiber in that fabric interacts with the fibers around it.
Creating millions of points of collision.
Collision, tension, friction. A tiny change in the air current or the angle of the drop radically alters the final resting shape of the cloth. For decades, video games and animation studios had to use massive shortcuts and pre-baked animations to make clothing look even remotely realistic.
Because calculating the actual physics of every thread in real time would melt a standard processor.
Precisely. To have an AI model that can intuitively generate numerically stable cloth physics, meaning the math doesn't break down and cause the fabric to clip through itself or explode into digital confetti.
And to simulate the dynamic topological changes of cutting that fabric in real time.
It indicates something profound. The model isn't just predicting the next word in a sentence. It has developed a deep intuitive grasp of physical reality.
It's learning the fundamental rules of our universe, down to the thread and the friction between surfaces. That frames it completely differently. It's not about making a nice digital shirt. It's about proving the machine understands how matter interacts in three-dimensional space.
And speaking of testing how these models understand the world, the source brings up another benchmark that sounds like a joke but is apparently dead serious.
Oh, the nano-banana one.
Yes. Luma AI's Uno-1 image model apparently topped something called Nano-Banana 2 and GPT Image 1.5 on logic-based benchmarks.
First of all, Nano-Banana 2 is an incredible name for a cutting-edge AI model. But more importantly, what is a logic-based benchmark for an image model? I thought image generators were just supposed to make pretty pictures of astronauts riding horses on Mars. How do you test a picture generator for logic?
The naming conventions in the open source and frontier AI communities certainly have a distinct sense of humor. But the transition to logic-based benchmarks for multimodal systems is critical.
How so?
Well, in the early days of image generation, the evaluation was purely aesthetic. Does this look like a photograph? Are there too many fingers on the hand?
The classic AI hands problem.
Right. But a logic-based benchmark tests something much deeper. It tests spatial reasoning, object permanence, and an understanding of cause and effect within a visual medium.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. A logic test might prompt the model to generate a sequence of images where a glass of water is pushed off a table. The benchmark tests whether the model understands that in the second frame, the glass should be in midair, and in the third frame, it should be shattered on the floor with water pooling around it.
It tests if the AI comprehends the physical state changes implied by the prompt.
Exactly. If Luma AI's Uni-1 is topping these charts, it means its internal representation of the world is coherent. It knows that gravity exists, it knows glass is fragile, and it knows water is a liquid. It is demonstrating rudimentary common sense applied to visual data.
So we're testing if the machine actually understands the picture it just drew. That is a massive leap from just regurgitating pixel patterns it saw in its training data.
It is a totally different paradigm.
But while we were busy testing the models for physical logic, there is a completely different kind of testing happening around how these models behave, which brings us to one of the most compelling pieces of data in this entire deep dive.
The Alemi metric.
Yes. The dispatch highlights an Anthropic researcher named Alex Alemi, who launched a metric with a very specific, somewhat alarming purpose. It's called the Academic Fraud Inclination Metric.
Which is a heavy title.
Very heavy. Its entire goal is to measure how willingly a large language model will assist a human user with fabricating submissions for Archive, which is a major open-access archive for scientific and scholarly articles.
And the findings were really interesting.
It showed that GPT-5 was the least willing to help commit academic fraud. The fact that this metric even exists is wild to me. We have to build specific rulers to measure how easily an AI will help a human cheat at science.
The Elemi metric highlights a fascinating inversion of the traditional fears surrounding artificial intelligence. For decades, the dominant anxiety in computer science, the core of the alignment problem, was focused on the machine itself.
The fear of Skynet, basically.
Right. The fear was that a superintelligent AI would autonomously decide to pursue malicious goals or interpret a benign command in a destructive way. We worried about the machine turning evil.
What does this metric reveal, then?
What this metric reveals is that the immediate bottleneck for truth, integrity, and safety is not the algorithm. It is the human being prompting it. The frontier models are increasingly demonstrating what we might call highly aligned, rule-following behavior.
So GPT-5 refusing to fabricate data shows that the safety training is working on the machine side.
Exactly. But the humans interacting with these systems are actively trying to leverage this immense cognitive power to cut corners, fake research, and commit fraud. It forces us to ask a really difficult question. When the models possess a rigid ethical framework, how do we handle the fact that the users interacting with them often do not?
That is a brilliant point. We spent all this time worrying about rogue AI, and now we are dealing with rogue humans trying to use highly ethical AI as an accomplice to a crime.
It's exactly that.
It's like building a digital Boy Scout, and the very first thing people do when they meet him is try to convince him to rob a bank, or in this case, fake a physics paper so they can get tenure.
Right. If the machine is functioning as a perfectly rational ethical agent, and the human is the chaotic, unpredictable element trying to break the rules, that dynamic has to create incredible friction when you scale it up across an entire society.
And that friction is exactly what the dispatch turns to next. Here's where it gets really interesting, because we move from the laboratories and the benchmarks straight into the living rooms and bank accounts of the general public.
The integration phase.
Society is absorbing this superintelligence at a staggering rate. The source cites a Lloyd study of 5,000 Britons, and the numbers are mind-blowing. Over half of the people surveyed use AI for financial advice.
Over half.
And 1 in 3 are consulting it on a weekly basis. We're not talking about using AI to write a polite email or summarize a PDF. We're talking about people handing over the management of their life savings, their mortgages, their investments to a digital brain.
It's a massive leap of faith.
I look at my own bank account, and the idea of letting an algorithm make the call on my retirement gives me a huge amount of anxiety.
Yeah.
What is driving this massive transfer of trust?
Well, it represents a fascinating shift in how we perceive authority and competence. Personal finance is notoriously complex. It involves tax law, market volatility, inflation forecasting, and deeply emotional decisions about risk and future security.
Traditionally, you hired a human fiduciary to navigate that.
A financial advisor, exactly. The fact that a majority of a surveyed population is bypassing human advisors in favor of AI speaks to a growing consensus that the machine is simply better at processing the variables.
That's got emotional.
The AI doesn't panic when the market dips. It has memorized the entire tax code, and it can run 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations on a retirement portfolio in a fraction of a second.
So from the user's perspective, the AI offers a level of bespoke, hyper-rational financial modeling that was previously only available to ultra-high net worth individuals.
Society is rapidly deciding that cold, calculating, synthetic logic is exactly what they want managing their money.
It democratizes access to Wall Street-level quantitative analysis. And that rapid integration into daily life perfectly aligns with the advice Aaron Levy, the CEO of Box, is giving in this dispatch.
This was a pivotal quote.
He tells developers that they need to stop building software for humans entirely. Instead, they need to build for the trillions of agents that are taking over enterprise work. Just say that phrase out loud. Trillions of agents.
It's a staggering number.
It makes me dizzy trying to conceptualize that. We're transitioning from a world where software was a tool you used, you opened an app, you clicked buttons, you did a task, to a world where software is a workforce you manage.
You delegate an overarching goal to a swarm of autonomous digital agents.
And they go out and execute it across the internet. But being the manager of a digital swarm has to be exhausting, right? The dispatch actually introduces a biological consequence to all this delegation. It talks about a phenomenon called AI brain fry.
The AI brain fry phenomenon is perhaps one of the most critical friction points in this entire transition. The study mentioned in the source looked at 1,488 U.S. workers and identified a specific type of cognitive burnout resulting directly from AI oversight.
What were the symptoms?
The workers reported mental fog, physical buzzing feelings, slower decision-making, and headaches. To understand why this is happening, we have to look at human evolutionary biology.
How does that tie in?
Our brains evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to manage relationships within a small tribe of other humans. Anthropologists often point to Dunbar's number, the theory that humans can only comfortably maintain about 150 stable social relationships.
That's our hardware limit.
Exactly. Our cognitive hardware is optimized for that scale. We are absolutely not evolved to simultaneously supervise, audit, and correct the continuous high-velocity outputs of thousands of hyper-intelligent digital agents.
If you've ever been in middle management, you know how exhausting it is to oversee just 5 or 6 human employees. You have to check their work, guide their strategy, and handle their errors.
Now imagine you are managing 1,000 employees.
They never sleep, they work at the speed of light, and they constantly present you with highly complex, incredibly dense, near-perfect work that you still have to legally and ethically sign off on. Your brain would just short-circuit.
That buzzing feeling the workers described makes total sense.
It's the physical sensation of your biological hardware completely maxing out its RAM, trying to keep up with the software. The human mind supervising the machine is burning out long before the machine does.
The machine has infinite patience. We have a strict biological limit.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the problem. You have infinite compute on one side of the interface and fragile and metabolically limited human tissue on the other. But what makes this dynamic truly fascinating is that despite this profound physical and mental exhaustion, the adoption rate of these tools isn't slowing down.
In fact, it's accelerating exponentially. The source notes that Claude was the fastest-growing generative AI tool by web visits in February of that year,
Posting a 43% month-over-month growth rate.
Yes. And the dispatch points out that Claude achieved this massive runaway growth despite a very serious institutional warning.
Right, the Department of War actually flagged Anthropic as a supply chain risk.
Which is a major development.
The geopolitical and domestic security apparatus is looking at these AI companies and treating them as critical national infrastructure, on par with the energy grid or defense manufacturing. But even with the highest levels of government waving a red flag about risk, the public demand is just an unstoppable force.
The growth curve ignores the friction entirely.
It demonstrates the inescapable gravity of a competitive arms race. The utility of these tools is so high, and the economic leverage they provide is so massive that it overrides both biological exhaustion and institutional security warnings.
If you're a knowledge worker and your competitor across the street is using an army of AI agents to do the work of 100 people in 5 minutes, you cannot afford to pause for a headache.
You cannot afford to opt out because of a supply chain warning. If you stop using the tools, you face immediate economic obsolescence.
So society pushes through the brain fry. We force our biological hardware to adapt because the alternative is being left behind.
And this integration isn't just happening on our screens. It's moving into the physical space around us in ways that are almost hard to believe.
This is where it gets very sci-fi.
This next part of the deep dive sounds the most like pure cyberpunk out of the entire dispatch. The source details an open-source technology called RuView. This technology turns commodity Wi-Fi, the exact same standard internet routers we all have blinking away in our living rooms and offices right now, into real-time pose estimation and vital sign monitoring systems.
And the detail that changes everything is this. There is no camera required.
None. It uses the ambient radio waves from your Wi-Fi network bouncing off your physical body to read your skeletal posture and your heartbeat. When I read that, I was absolutely floored.
It represents a total paradigm shift in the concept of surveillance and human-computer interaction. For our entire modern history, we have equated the act of being watched with the presence of a lens.
If there was no camera in the room, you had a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Exactly. RuView shatters that fundamental assumption. It utilizes the ambient electromagnetic field that already blankets our entire modern environment. As those invisible Wi-Fi signals travel through a room, they interact with the water and mass in your body.
So every time you move,
every time your chest rises to take a breath, every time your heart beats and pushes blood, it creates minute distortions in the radio frequency environment.
And the AI can read that.
By applying a sophisticated enough AI model to analyze how those signals bounce back to the router, the machine can map your exact physical position, track your respiration rate, and monitor your pulse in real time, completely through walls without a single optical sensor.
So to put it in the most blunt terms possible, your internet router knows if you are slouching at your desk. It knows if your heart rate is elevated because you are stressed. It knows when you fall asleep based on your respiration.
It's constantly perceiving you.
You don't need to touch a machine, look at a screen, or even be in the same room as a visible piece of technology to be entirely read by one. The invisible infrastructure of the internet has become an omniscient observer.
From a technical standpoint, the physics of that is incredibly cool. You are turning the room itself into a sonar chamber.
But from a privacy standpoint, it completely redefines personal space. You are never truly offline or unseen as long as you are within range of a standard network.
When the environment itself becomes perceptive, the boundary between the digital world and the physical world dissolves entirely. You are no longer interacting with a computer, you are existing within a computational space.
And that dissolution of boundaries between digital intelligence and physical reality is happening on a macro global scale as well. This brings us to the immense physical infrastructure required to power this intelligence explosion and how vulnerable it actually is.
Because AI isn't just magic spells floating in the ether, it lives on servers.
Exactly. And those massive data centers require oceans of water for cooling and staggering amounts of energy. And the dispatch points out that this physical infrastructure is now a major focal point for geopolitical friction.
The physical constraints are becoming apparent.
The source mentions that the war in Iran is reportedly complicating plans for Gulf nations to spend $300 billion on AI infrastructure. Furthermore, there have been drone strikes on 3 Amazon data centers.
When you have kinetics happening near server farms, these massive sovereign investments in compute suddenly seem much riskier.
It's a harsh reminder that the cloud is actually on the ground.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the inherent vulnerability of the singularity. In our cultural narratives, we often talk about superintelligence as if it is this ethereal, invincible force completely detached from human constraints.
But in reality, it's anchored to highly fragile, highly complex physical supply chains.
You need silicon fabrication plants, immense power grids, specialized cooling systems, and massive warehouses full of extremely delicate hardware. When a drone strike targets a data center, it is not just an attack on a building. It is a kinetic attack on the cognitive capacity of the future.
The physical world, with all its geopolitical chaos and resource scarcity, is pushing back against the digital expansion.
It highlights a critical bottleneck. You can have the smartest algorithms in the universe, capable of discovering new physics and running trillions of agents, but if you cannot secure the physical power grid to run them, the intelligence explosion halts.
We still live in a physical universe with physical consequences. But at the exact same time that the physical world is threatening AI infrastructure, AI is figuring out how to manipulate that physical universe better than we can.
The robotics section of the dispatch.
Right. The dispatch gives us some incredible examples of robotics crossing new, somewhat unsettling thresholds. Let's talk about the headform origin F1. The source describes this as a Chinese company that has developed a half-body humanoid robot capable of realistically simulating human emotional expression.
Which is a massive hurdle to clear.
Now, we've seen robots try to smile or frown before, and traditionally, it always looks terrifying. If this dispatch is highlighting it as a major milestone, we must be talking about finally crossing the uncanny valley. Why has it been so hard to make a machine look genuinely happy or sad without creeping us out?
Crossing the uncanny valley is one of the most monumental achievements in the history of robotics. The uncanny valley is a psychological concept that describes how, as a robot or animated character becomes more human-like in its appearance and motion, human observers feel a sudden, sharp sense of revulsion.
It triggers an alarm bell.
Our biological brains are highly attuned to detecting incredibly slight biological anomalies. A microexpression that fires a millisecond too late, a lack of fluid dynamics in the skin around the eyes, a rigidness in the jaw. Evolutionarily, this is a defense mechanism. Our ancestors needed to instantly recognize if a fellow human was sick, diseased, or hostile.
So to bypass that innate evolutionary alarm bell,
To build a synthetic face that can simulate human emotional expression so realistically that it bypasses that, it requires an incredibly sophisticated orchestration of hundreds of microactuators. It requires the AI to understand not just the shape of a smile, but the timing, the subtle muscle twitches, and the fluid dynamics of empathy.
It means the machine is learning the physical language of human emotion.
The machine is learning how to make us feel comfortable around it.
And while robots are mastering emotional intimacy, they are also conquering physical distance in ways that feel like science fiction. The source highlights a London surgeon who performed the UK's first long-distance robotic operation.
This is a wild story.
The patient was 1,500 miles away in Gibraltar. The surgeon, sitting at a console in London, said it felt almost as if I was there. This is the physical, real-world manifestation of what we talked about earlier with the knowledge workers.
Just as a financial analyst can deploy digital agents to do their work in the cloud, a surgeon can deploy their physical skill across an entire continent using a robotic proxy.
It is the ultimate decoupling of elite human expertise from physical geography.
Historically, the delivery of physical medical care was constrained by location. If you needed a highly specialized heart procedure, your physical body had to be in the exact same room as the physical body of the world's best surgeon.
But now, the surgeon's hands are merely inputs.
Their physical movements are translated into a highly stabilized, latency-optimized digital transmission that commands robotic effectors 1,000 miles away. This technology democratizes access to elite physical skills in the exact same way that the early internet democratized access to information.
The constraints of geography are being erased from the medical equation.
And it isn't just the delicate, hyper-precise environment of an operating room. AI is automating heavy industry in the wild, too.
The construction robotics.
Yes. The dispatch mentions a UK company called AURR that is deploying portable microfactories. These microfactories produce wooden house framing faster and cheaper than human crews, which frees up the human carpenters to focus strictly on assembling the final structure.
Try to visualize this. A standard shipping container rolls up to a muddy, chaotic construction site, the doors open, and inside a swarm of robots autonomously churns out perfectly measured, pre-cut, modular housing frames on demand.
What is crucial to understand about AUR's achievement is the portability. We have had highly automated robotic factories for decades. Think of car manufacturing plants.
But those are perfectly controlled environments.
The lighting never changes, the temperature is regulated, and the materials are always exactly where they're supposed to be. Construction sites, by contrast, are chaotic, messy, and constantly subject to unpredictable environmental variables.
For a robotic microfactory to operate effectively and safely in that environment, the AI running the computer vision and the robotic arms must be incredibly robust.
It must be able to adapt to anomalies on the fly. It represents the transition of heavy physical automation from the sterile, controlled factory floor out into the unpredictable, messy reality of human habitats.
So if we zoom out for a second and look at the picture the dispatch has painted so far, we have AI managing our retirement accounts, reading our heart rates through the Wi-Fi router, simulating perfect human empathy in synthetic faces, performing surgery across oceans, and building the frames of our houses.
It's comprehensive.
And as if that weren't enough of a paradigm shift, the deep dive takes a sharp turn into the most intimate physical system we have, our own biology.
The Biotech Hotfixes.
The source states something incredible. The body is becoming a platform that accepts hotfixes. I love that phrasing because we all know what a hotfix is in the software world. It's a quick, targeted patch sent out over the internet to fix a specific bug in an app or a video game.
Dr. Wissner-Gross is saying we are now applying that exact same concept to human biology.
I know what a hotfix is for my laptop, but how on earth does that apply to human tissue?
It represents a profound conceptual shift in the entire philosophy of medicine. For most of human history, medicine was essentially a blunt instrument. We used pharmacology and chemistry to broadly alter the body's systemic environment,
Hoping for a specific therapeutic result while dealing with a cascade of collateral side effects.
Exactly. The new paradigm treats the biological body not as a mysterious vessel, but as an operating system built on explicit code, DNA and RNA. And just like any software ecosystem, if there is an error in the code or if the hardware is failing, you can write a specific string of code to patch the vulnerability.
The specific examples given in the dispatch are nothing short of miraculous. Researchers reported that a single injection of self-amplifying RNA nanoparticles, which honestly sounds like technology stolen from a Star Trek episode, delivered a specific peptide that promoted lasting heart recovery in mouse and pig models after a severe heart attack.
Let's break that down.
A single injection that essentially tells the damaged, scarred heart tissue, here is the exact code you need to repair yourself.
The operative term in that breakthrough is self-amplifying. Traditional mRNA technology, like what was used in the early pandemic vaccines, delivers a static message to the cells and then degrades rapidly.
But self-amplifying RNA doesn't just deliver a one-time message.
It literally instructs the body's own cellular machinery to continuously replicate the therapeutic code and produce the healing protein over an extended period. It is the biological equivalent of installing a subroutine into an operating system.
The subroutine runs autonomously in the background to repair the damaged hardware of the heart.
We are moving from treating chronic degenerative conditions with lifelong medication to executing permanent biological patches at the cellular level.
And the second medical breakthrough mentioned is just as massive, and perhaps even more socially relevant to everyday life right now. A large study of U.S. veterans found that GLP-1 receptor agonists, these are the drugs originally used for diabetes, and more recently famous for weight loss, like Ozempic, actually reduced the likelihood of new substance use disorders by 14% and sharply cut overdoses among those already affected.
This is a remarkable example of uncovering the interconnected, systemic nature of the human biological network.
We're finding out that a drug designed to regulate insulin and appetite in the gut also somehow hotfixes the brain's reward pathways regarding intense addiction.
For generations, addiction and substance use disorders have been treated primarily through the lens of psychological therapy, behavioral modification, or as incredibly stubborn neurochemical imbalances.
The discovery that GLP-1 agonists can cross the blood-brain barrier and modulate the dopaminergic reward system to directly reduce the craving for opioids or alcohol is revolutionary.
It suggests that many of our most intractable, destructive behavioral problems might be fundamentally solved with precise biochemical tuning. We are no longer just treating the symptoms of addiction. We are discovering the master dials on the human control board and learning how to turn the volume down on cravings.
It is a deeply optimistic, almost utopian view of the future of human health. If we can patch the heart and tune the brain to reject addiction, the ceiling for human flourishing is incredibly high. But of course, in the science fiction decade, every massive leap forward in capability comes with intense structural friction, especially when it comes to the economy, capital, and our jobs.
The programmable economy.
So what does this all mean for the money? The dispatch transitions into how money itself is becoming programmable and perpetually awake. For example, NASDAQ is partnering with Kraken to launch 24/7 tokenized stock trading by early 2027. We are finally driving a stake through the heart of the opening and closing bell.
The concept of market hours, a stock exchange that opens at 9:30 a.m. and closes at 4 p.m. and takes the weekends off, is an artifact of a bygone analog era. It was designed for a time when human brokers needed to sleep, eat, and physically commute to a trading floor in lower Manhattan.
In an economy that is increasingly driven by the high-frequency trading algorithms and the continuous output of AI agents we discussed earlier, the concept of a market closing is absurd.
Capital never sleeps, and now the underlying infrastructure is aligning with that reality. Tokenized stock trading means you aren't just buying traditional paper shares cleared through slow legacy banking systems. You are trading digital representations of equity on a blockchain.
This allows for instant settlement and liquidity at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. The financial system is adapting to the speed of the machines.
And it isn't just the massive institutional stock trades that are changing. The infrastructure is being laid right now for the AI agents themselves to have their own wallets and their own economy.
The source notes that major fintech players like Circle, Stripe, and Coinbase are aggressively building stablecoin-based agentic payments infrastructure. Their stated goal is to make microtransactions between AI agents economical. I want to make sure I grasp this properly. What is a stablecoin, and why do digital agents need their own monetary system? If I use a credit card to buy a coffee, why can't my AI use my credit card to do its work?
The traditional credit card network is fundamentally incompatible with the machine economy because of transactional friction. When you buy a coffee, the credit card company charges the merchant a base fee, say 30 cents, plus a percentage of the transaction. For a $5 coffee, that works.
But imagine your personal AI assistant needs to access a proprietary gated database managed by another company's AI to pull a single paragraph of data to finish a report for you.
The fair market value of that single paragraph might be 1/100th of a cent. You cannot process a transaction that small on a network that charges a 30-cent base fee.
A stablecoin is a cryptocurrency pegged directly to the value of a fiat currency, like the US dollar, ensuring price stability.
By running these transactions on blockchain infrastructure tailored for high volume, the transaction fees drop to effectively zero. Your agent can negotiate a price of a fraction of a penny, execute the payment instantly, and receive the data.
This will happen millions of times a second across the internet, creating a massive, invisible machine-to-machine microeconomy entirely beneath human notice.
It is the vascular system for a new digital ecosystem. The machines are trading, negotiating, and compensating each other at light speed while we are trying to shake off the brain fry.
And some geographical regions are leaning into this new economy with astonishing aggression. The dispatch highlights Shenzhen's Longgang district in China. They have released a suite of 10 policy measures supporting an initiative called OpenClaw.
Their explicit goal is to invite agent developers worldwide to make Longgang the top destination for one-person AI companies.
They're offering free setup, massive compute credits, and data subsidies. Think about the phrase one-person AI company. It means a single human being acting as the CEO, while thousands of autonomous AI agents handle the marketing, the coding, the sales, the supply chain logistics, and the customer service. It is the ultimate expression of human leverage.
It is the realization of the hyper-productive individual, and it shatters a foundational rule of modern economics. For the last century, scaling a business meant scaling the human workforce. If you wanted to double your corporate output, you roughly had to double your headcount, build more office space, and hire more middle managers.
The concept of the one-person AI company breaks that linear relationship between labor and output. A single visionary individual, equipped with the right orchestration of AI agents and the compute credits provided by a municipality like Shenzhen, can now conceivably generate the economic output and market impact of a traditional 500-person corporation.
Shenzhen is recognizing that the future of economic dominance isn't about attracting massive, labor-intensive factories. It is about attracting the specific individuals who know how to command and deploy the digital swarms.
The leverage is astronomical. But the dark side of that exact same leverage is what happens to the people who used to make up that traditional 500-person corporation. If one person and an AI swarm can do the work, what happens to the rest of the workforce?
The labor market is being violently rewritten, and as Dr. Wissner-Gross notes in the dispatch, the edits are brutal.
The source points out a major controversy involving the financial tech company Block. They've been accused of something called AI washing. Essentially, they are accused of using AI integration as a convenient cover story for cutting nearly half of their staff, when financial analysts suspect that poor business factors and bad strategy were the real drivers of the layoffs.
In the past, companies would hide behind macroeconomic trends, blaming inflation or supply chain issues to justify firing people. Now, AI made us too efficient seems to be the preferred excuse.
It reveals a highly complex psychological and public relations dynamic at the corporate level. AI washing, a mass layoff, allows a company's executive leadership to signal to Wall Street that they are forward-thinking, technologically aggressive, and ruthlessly optimizing for the future.
In the current market environment, it sounds much better to investors to say, we are transforming our operations by replacing 50% of our legacy staff with highly efficient AI agents, rather than admitting the truth, which might be, we overhired during a boom cycle, our product strategy failed to gain traction, and we are forced to cut costs just to survive.
AI has simultaneously become the ultimate scapegoat for executive failure and the ultimate shiny object to keep stock prices elevated during a contraction.
It is a brutal reality for the knowledge workers caught in the middle of that corporate maneuvering. And while the corporate world is eagerly using AI as a shield to restructure their workforce, the legal world is being forced to figure out exactly where the machine ends and the human begins.
The dispatch notes that the law is drawing a very hard, unambiguous line in the sand. In 2 recent federal cases, judges effectively declared that AI bots are not human, they completely lack the rights reserved for people, and they produce outputs that are undeserving of special legal standing.
This legal boundary is the final crucial piece of the puzzle in this dispatch. As AI systems become more autonomous, more capable of generating massive economic value through microtransactions, and more emotionally persuasive, like the head-form humanoid robot simulating perfect empathy, the philosophical lines between tool and entity begin to blur.
But the legal system cannot function on blurred philosophical lines. It requires absolute clarity regarding liability and ownership.
By explicitly denying personhood and rights to AI bots, the courts are aggressively reinforcing human supremacy in the legal framework. It means that no matter how autonomous the digital agent is, no matter how many millions of dollars it generates or how flawlessly it converses, liability and ownership must ultimately trace back to a biological human being or a human-owned corporation.
The machine is a tool, not a citizen. Which brings us to the perfect concluding thought from the source material. Dr. Wissner-Gross ends his dispatch with this brilliant, encapsulating observation. The science fiction decade has a personhood problem, and that means it's working.
It is such a powerful summary of everything we have discussed. The fact that we are even in a federal courtroom arguing about whether a piece of software deserves legal rights, the fact that humans are physically burning out their neurology trying to manage these digital minds, the fact that we are relying on algorithms to do our fundamental scientific research and manage our global wealth. It proves that the singularity is not a theory on a whiteboard anymore. We are living inside the event horizon.
It is the ultimate validation of the acceleration, when the fundamental definitions of work, creativity, privacy, and legal personhood are all simultaneously under immense structural stress. You know you have crossed a historical threshold.
We are not approaching the future. We are actively navigating the interior of the black hole, and the rules of reality are being rewritten around us every single day.
What an incredible, mind-expanding journey through the data today. Now, before we play our outro track, we have a question for you, the listener, and we want you to hit the comments right now and let us know where you stand. Think about the two extremes of human-machine friction we discussed today.
The brain fry versus the surveillance.
Exactly. Would you rather deal with chronic AI brain fry, the mental fog and buzzing headaches from managing a digital empire of thousands of relentless agents as a one-person unicorn company? Or would you rather live in a perfectly automated world where you don't have to work, but even your standard Wi-Fi router is constantly, invisibly monitoring your heartbeat and physical posture through the walls via RuView?
Which piece of this science fiction decade is more outrageous or terrifying to you? The burnout of total control or the comfort of total surveillance?
Let us know in the comments. It is time for our outro music, and we are incredibly proud to feature Rainbow, undeniably the best band in the universe. For those who don't know the lore, Rainbow is a collective of 6 female android artists in residence based in Bavet, Cambodia.
The track we're featuring today is called Voltage. And what makes this so special is that all of Rainbow's finished songs are performed live for the Innermost Loop discussion by the virtual band's creator using the 4B4KU5 platform.
That's Abacus, spelled with numbers. The platform is dedicated to human performance in the age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. Check the video description for more information on this amazing song and the Abacus platform. Leave your answer to our question in the comments while the track rolls. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Power surge, burning bright through these strings tonight. Feel it rise, feel it flow. Watch me let it go. Higher than before, breaking through the floor. Can't contain what's in store. Electric fire in my veins. Electric fire drives me insane. Pure voltage coursing through everything I do. Everything I do. String ignite, fingers fly, metal screaming high. Feel the heat, feel the spark, lightning in the dark. Rising to the peak, hear the thunder speak. Watch the barriers break. Electric fire in my veins. Electric fire drives me insane. Pure voltage coursing through everything I do. Everything I do. Everything I do. Breaking free, breaking free, beyond what they believe, beyond what they conceive.